Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discussion with Charlotte Cann of Dark Mountain. My name is Greg Salyer. I'm the president of the Philosophical Research Society, and I'm so happy to have Charlotte here from Eastbridge, UK. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello, Greg. Lovely to be here.
I'm so
across
happy.
The waters.
Yes, I'm so happy you joined us. I should explain how we came to this meeting, this interview. Those of you who are in the PRS community will know that I, for years, did a Tuesday night lecture on our campus in Los Angeles. And of course, that hasn't happened now for 15 months or so. So we moved online, as one does, and an interesting thing happened. One of the gifts of the pandemic, and I hope there are many more, is a new community developed, and it was really about 10 to 12 people. And we just kind of said, what are you reading that's interesting? And I found this Noema article, and I love Noema. It's a publication by the Bergeron Institute here in Los Angeles that's doing really good work. And I saw this essay called Relearning the Language of a Lost World. And I thought, well, that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about what comes next, what happens when myths fail and new myths emerge, and what's that process like, and the trauma that it produces, but also the benefits that come from it. And I began reading this essay, and by Charlotte, of course. And I thought, well, she's saying exactly what we've been saying. And so I reached out and said, would you be interested in talking to me? And she graciously said yes. So thank you again, Charlotte.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I told you I wanted to talk about Dark Mountain, and you said, well, it's pretty complicated. Do you want to take a stab at that? What is Dark Mountain?
Okay, well, maybe I should explain that I'm a writer and an editor.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I do write, obviously, articles and books and things, but I work as an editor, and also I'm the co-director of the Dark Mountain Project. It's always really difficult to explain what it is, because it's a collaborative, collective network of writers and artists and thinkers who are responding to ecological and social collapse. And we've been doing that really for over 10 years now. At the beginning, there was a lot of pushback, saying, what are you're selling out, you should be, when everyone was talking about sustainability and everybody felt that they were going to be able to turn the ship around, and suddenly it became very obvious that actually the ship was heading for not exactly an iceberg, because there aren't so many icebergs left, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, it's going horribly wrong. And that literature and art was not really responding to that crisis. So it was there was a manifesto that came out, and it was like a gauntlet thrown down really to the writing community to say, come on, we can't keep writing these novels about love and big houses and war and people being killed. It's like, there's something else going on on the planet. Can we get the planet onto the pages, please? So since then, we've been producing, I'm just going to flag up a book here.
Yes.
We produce 2 hardback anthologies a year.
Yes.
Writing and art that are responding, that have different themes. This one, as you can see, it's wrapped up because it's actually about death and loss and renewal. And there are other things that we've looked at. We've looked at different genres, like poetry or fiction, and we looked at different big subjects. We're doing extraction at the moment. We've looked at the sacred. So each time there's a focus, there's a different way of looking at the very wicked problem we're all enmeshed in.
Yes. I love that you're doing print books.
Yeah.
I think they're back.
It's very old school.
Very old school. So are we. So that's 10 years you've been doing that.
We've been doing it for 10 years, yeah. And I mean, we do other things as well. Obviously, we do teaching courses. I mean, probably like you, it's a very big It's quite a big remit. We've done gatherings. We've taken people out into the wild. We've actually produced an LP. I mean, lots of different things. But what's interesting about finding the story really that fits, or I mean fits, that goes with what we're doing right at the moment in the planet, on the planet, is it's very collaborative. It's collective. It's not just one voice. So books are created by a collective of editors, and sometimes up to 70 contributors. So it's very, it's a very diverse response to various crises. It's not just one person saying, "I've got the solution."
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I hope continues to happen. That was my experience, as I just described with the president's class. We went from 75 people in an auditorium to 10 people on a Zoom screen. Smaller is maybe more effective now, or at least not selling out for the scale to do things on a big scale, which social media, of course, pushes you to do.
That's right. I mean, I think it's time. It's what I've really valued about working with Duck Mountain is that it's got this very clear frame of of collapse. But within that, you can actually pay attention to things in a very different way.
Right.
Because you haven't got any social or political pressure to produce a perfect piece of writing that fits an ideology. It's absolutely not like that. It's just like, here's the situation. So how do you feel? What attention do you feel we should pay to certain aspects of life?
Well, and may I say that's exactly what your essay did. For me at least, and I imagine for other people. So thank you for that. And I want to talk about that more in a minute, but I feel like we could have a full conversation just about your life. So you lived one life and then you abandoned it. Maybe that's too strong a word, but you hit the road.
Completely right.
Okay.
Walked out of it, I think is probably even better. Yeah.
Tell us about that. It's a fascinating story, just your life story.
Well, I was born in the city. I was born in London, and I did all the usual things in a sense, school and all that. and then by accident, I ended up working for Vogue magazine, and I just I don't want to work in this magazine. And they said, "Well, do you want to be a shopping editor?" I said, "No, I hate shopping." They were, "You'll be perfect." And so I went on this very odd, having been a literature student, suddenly found myself thrown into the world of very high-end consumerism, which I then wrote about quite critically, I have to say, not always saying it was the best thing. So I wrote about fashion, I wrote about things, and beauty. Of course, I always loved. I mean, I love things. So I wrote about food, I wrote about, the high glamorous lifestyle. And then when I was 35, I had a wake-up call, as one does. Well, luckily, hopefully you do anyway. It's like,
that's the age.
Yeah, it's a perfect age, isn't it? It's like, okay, you're 35. Are you going to carry on doing this thing or what? And no, but guess what? I went to Mexico, and I went, oh my God, what am I doing? There's a world out there, and I'm just writing about chairs and little black frocks, and it's just. I don't want to go to Milan. I want to go to Mexico. In fact, I want to sell my flat and sell everything I've got, which I did, and just get a one-way ticket. So that's what I did with my partner, Mark, and we went traveling. We were on the road for 10 years, on and off.
Wow. Okay. I thought I was a road warrior, but 10 years, that's serious nomadism.
It's quite nomadic, yeah. And I spent a lot of time in certain places. Mexico was one of them. We went to a lot of time in South America, and a lot of time actually on the Mexican-Arizona border. But it was high desert, really,
desert. Got it.
Yeah, really fantastic. And I learned I wrote a book about medicine plants basically, and I learned a lot of my plants there in the desert.
Can I ask, did you learn Spanish before you went?
I didn't, no, but my partner's completely fluent in lots of languages, Spanish being one of them. And I speak very bad Spanish, but I can get by. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Incredible. And the way you write about this, just in the Noema article, is like it's two different lives, and you woke up to a whole new world, really. And that was a product of what? Not just travel. Travel was kind of the mechanism, but you must have been seeking something. Is that fair to say?
I think the thing is when you travel open, which is I'm not traveling just to get something, or I'm not traveling to have a holiday, or I'm not a tourist, basically. This is the life. I think you're much more open to encounter.
Yes.
And that you can only really survive, I think, on the road if you really know what you're doing. You're there to deepen your relationship with the planet, which is what I wanted to do. But also that's a two-way thing, because you have to go in, have to do a lot of inner journeying to do that. And I think I write in the article that part of that is letting go of the old story of which I was brought up with. I had a traditional bourgeois upbringing. I was, educated in a very traditional way. History was like this, literature is like that. And then, of course, when you start traveling and you open up and you have encounters with the planet and with other people, you realize that, hang on, there's plenty of other stories going on. They're just not the official. It's not the official highway. You have to go off piste. You have to go off track. So I did. I went off track for a long time.
It feels like that is happening globally now, not by our choice. That the pandemic and the political upheavals it seems like they've exposed the fractures in the old story, the meta narratives, the myths, really. And we're in the process of abandoning one story, and the new story is yet to emerge. And that's why I was especially struck by your article, because it's a kind of map for the new world, the real new world, the one that's emerging post-pandemic, post-political upheaval. So I want to zero in on one sentence, because I love it when a writer can say in one sentence everything I've been thinking for a year. And you do that. So I just want to read this sentence and let you comment on it. And there are many sentences like this in the article, may I say. But you write, we need to develop a consciousness, meaning we don't have it now, to re-entangle ourselves, because we were once entangled. And then we need to develop a consciousness to re-entangle ourselves in the sentient earth, a conscious earth. Wow. That still kind of just stops me in my tracks. Can you say more about that? Or maybe that's all there is to say.
No, I think there's a lot to say about that, actually.
Okay.
Because it is a practice. I mean, I think that's the thing, Greg. It's like, the article, like a lot of things that one writes, of course, comes out of weeks, months, years of different experiences and thinking and thought things. And I've always accepted, really, that the earth is sentient, i.e. that the earth is conscious. All things on the earth have a consciousness and have an intelligence. And that, of course, is not what we're taught at all. We live in a culture that says, only human beings are sentient and everything else is material or it's resources. And to me, that is the big crux. It's like, okay, so either everything's alive and conscious, or it's just that it's there for you to use it, right? And you could justify it through politics, or you justify it through your religion, or you just don't even think about it, you just do it, right? But as soon as you say everything is sentient, you're in a different paradigm.
Right.
And we know, obviously, whether we've had relationship with indigenous people, or we've read about indigenous people. I mean, that is just it's just read. I mean, that's totally what the perception is, that everything is living and everything has a medicine, or everything has a story, and everything has, fits into this incredible living web of which of which we are part, with, even though we don't realize it half the time. And so what I mean by re-entangle is to shift the mind into our own intelligence that actually understands that. And I think I talk about in the article, I talk about that we are actually in our body, our physical being is archaic. It hasn't really changed that much, since Homo sapiens kind of developed one strand of human being developed into Homo sapiens. It's the same body, it hasn't changed that much. So we've got that memory of what it is to be in a sentient earth and how to be entangled, part of that weave. So we know the problem is here. This is where civilization is, sort of thing. And then the rest of us is like, when's she going to get into the body and speak to us? When she's going to use this to touch the trees, or be kin with the planet? It's physical. It's physical. We're physical. So when I talk about re-entangle, it's basically that decision. One, to totally go shift your attention to the fact that the earth is alive. And if it's alive, what are you doing within that fabric? What's the move that you need to make? And the reason I talk about perception such a lot is, to me, it's that how we perceive the planet is very much how it's how we then treat it. If we do see it just as a thing, as an object, we're going to treat it in one particular way. If we see it in terms of relationship, that we're kin with it, and even calling it is weird, because it's even that is a separation. Do you see what I mean? It's right. But it requires, I think, Greg, the thing that I was found really interesting coming back, because of course I wanted to be on the road forever. I wanted to live in that desert forever, wake up, hear the coyotes. I just really loved it. But, destiny brought me back. And so when you come back and you go, okay, so now what? Now I'm stuck back in Britain. What? And so the thing is, how do you learn? How do you learn to come from this very open space where you feel kin into a very difficult industrial civilization, which absolutely doesn't understand what you're talking about? So to really train the perception is for me, it has two things that it absolutely requires. One is time, a totally different understanding of time, and the other is a totally different understanding of space. So I think one of the trainings is to understand that, all the stories that we live by, the story of progress, is going along a line, right? It's linear, it's totally A to B, and it's totally right. We're going, and then we're going to succeed at the end of that line. Whereas if you're working within the mythos, or within indigenous storytelling, you are actually, it's actually much more like this. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Okay. And so in order to understand that any reality is made of lots and lots of elements, not just getting from A to B, you have to have time in order to assimilate it. And our culture goes so fast, everyone on there, like even on the Zoom, we're always on the clock and, hurry up, get the story out, get everything sold. It's going so fast that we're not going at the right pace in our bodies. And the heart doesn't go that fast, right? The mind goes fast, right? But the body doesn't. So for me, the trick of perception is to get the body perceiving and apprehending the life that it's in and the relationship. But that needs time. And a lot of the time, we're not allowed to do that, because we have to come up with solutions, we have to come up with answers, we have to get, deadlines and all those kind of things. We live in clock time. We do not live in time. We don't live in ancestral time, or rather, we don't live in the time in which ancestral time has a place. Do you see what I mean? So then we are informed by our ancestors. We are informed by the mythos. But all that needs a different attitude to time, and also our knowledge of space. In a way, we've got to understand. I've learned that even being in a tiny cottage in England, I can be in this small space. However, with my imagination, I can actually be in a much bigger reality. and not have to rush out and consume the planet, basically, to be in touch with other beings, other people, and other ideas. So I think it's a question of training the imagination, training the body, and training ourselves to get out of the head and into the heart, really.
Wow. Yeah, those are three things we have not been very good at of late. All those trainings. Wow, I love that combination of the imagination and the body, because of course we have a mind-body problem. Thank you, Descartes, for a while now. And I understand that completely. I live so much in my head, and my wife is a dancer, so she lives in her body, and sometimes we're just like, and I admire that so much, and just the imagination. I think readers of your essay might think, well, how do I do this? And that's the answer, right? I mean, you have to activate your imagination. And you also remind me, I don't know if you know this work, but it was influential to me. It was Vine Deloria Jr.'s God is Red, a Native American study of religion.
Okay.
He has a chapter in there where he says pretty much what you just said, is that we're a culture, the West is a culture that is dominated by time, a particular notion of time, linear time, that's also kind of moving towards some heaven, or scientific heaven, with all that means. Whereas he says native people live in space. And time becomes therefore not secondary, but it becomes embedded in the space. And so space-based cultures, he says, like indigenous cultures, just have a completely different outlook. They value relation instead of more abstract notions like history and progressivism and heaven and all that. Here's what he says, though. He says, time-based cultures, like you were describing, consume space. By definition, they must consume space because they're marching westward in America, or they're marching eastward in other parts of the world, or whatever. So that echoed for me very nicely with what you said. Wow, so much here. So yeah, it's rare to meet someone who has kind of undertaken this journey consciously, deliberately, maybe is the right word. I find that most people, and in most of the stories, the world mythology, this happens by accident. A white rabbit appears and you follow it, or a tornado happens and you land, you're not in Kansas anymore. I'm so impressed that you were more intentional about your journey. And at the same time, you had the same effects. You're mentioning at the beginning of your answer, the difficulty of return, which Joseph Campbell talks about, of course. And he said it's the most difficult part of the hero's journey, is to come back to the ordinary world. So I'm just reacting to all the things I'm hearing with great appreciation and connection. So one of the things I think happens, or I'm sorry, one of the ways to be intentional, like you were, is psychedelics, which is seeing a resurgence. I think Michael Pollan's book has helped with that. And you mentioned that at the beginning of your article, an experience of National Geographic photographer, I believe it was. And I love these stories because there's another book called The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby.
I know, yeah.
You know that book?
Yeah, I do, actually, yeah.
Yeah. And invariably, when we experience these other dimensions, whether it's intentional like you or accidental or whatever, we find beings more powerful, or at least very different from ourselves. And in Narby's book, he sees these two snakes arguing and they're laughing at him. because the human has lost his language. Look at him, how pathetic. He doesn't have his words. Something similar happened that you relate, where the beings, tell the anthropologist or the photographer, I think it was. Well, you finished the story.
Are you talking about Michael Harner?
Yeah, he finds himself deep in relation and not a supreme human being above all the other creatures. In fact, he is lower than these other beings.
Yeah, well, he encounters the dragons at the base of his skull, which is kind of our reptile consciousness, right. Which of course we do actually come from that. It is part of our makeup. And they were telling him, we're in charge, and and there was. And it's beautifully told, because he said he got because they were quite intimidating, right? As if you take hallucinogenics, which I'm sure, I don't know whether you have or not, but there are these moments where you go, okay, and you have to reassert what is human in you, and saying, I'm not going to be dominated by you, which is what he did. And that's when the shaman said to him afterwards, when he sought counsel afterwards, he said, this is what happened to me. And the shaman sort of said, they always say that.
They always say that.
They always say that. And I've had many experiences with hallucinogenic plants. I wrote a book about medicine plants, so that was absolutely part of my journey. Although not ayahuasca, I wasn't that part of South America, and I went to the left-hand side. But I think that is what I would call a fast track to opening consciousness. And I think, if you're very entrenched, it is a brilliant way to break what one writer calls break open the head. You have to break at some point. And whether that comes with encounter, or whether you intentionally take or work with hallucinogenic plants or other plants, or dreams. There are loads and loads of different ways, as you probably know, to break that hold that the rational mind has over your consciousness. But they are all valuable. They're all completely valuable. And I think not only that, I think you see what you're really up against in the outer world with when you encounter these forces, such as Hana did with the dragons. Because in the article I say, you can see, if you look at the politicians, if you look at the very authoritarian, dominating kind of culture that we live in, that is that force within the world. And if you've had experience with it, you just it has to be countered. It has to be countered in yourself first. It's not so you kind of go out with evangelical zeal and say, right, I'm going to slay all the dragons, because there's a trick to it. I don't know whether you ever read Lives of the Cell. It's a really brilliant book. I can't remember the guy's name now. Is it Lewis somebody? He's a scientist. He writes about the cell and the creation of the cell, and that even in the human cell there are these two forces, a bit like Jeremy Narby's snake. There are two seemingly contradictory forces within us. But you can't just kill off the bad guy. That's not how it works, right?
Right.
Because they are also the seat of creative energies. And any good myth will tell you that you go into and sit by the dragon's cave and you learn. You see, you don't kind of go in, right, I'm going to kill you. But we live in a very, a culture that says you've got to kill the dragons, right? And that hasn't worked very well for us. And partly I think it's that, all respect to Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. I think the hero's journey is slightly to the problem, partly because it's completely male. And, it's progress. It's like we're going out, we're going to feed, and we're very, not all, of course, all the hero's journeys aren't like that, but there is an aspect to, I'm going to get on my horse and I've got my spear and I'm going into the forest and I'm going to, liberate the world. Whereas I'm really interested in the female myths.
Great.
You mentioned Persephone, for example, and the female myths are very different because what you do is you go down. You don't go up, you go down. So I think they're very useful in these times where we are actually learning to go down. And all the female myths that I work with, the ones I really like, are particularly Psyche and Eros is a myth I work with. So she's given these 4 tasks to prove her love, right? And it's those 4 tasks, 4 underworld tasks that she has to complete. And she can only do that, like all good fairy stories, she can only do that if she has allies in the natural world. Yes. In all these different elemental worlds. And I feel that is, for me, that is a story that is really speaking to us now. You know, we are being given tasks that seem unsurmountable.
Yes.
But we need to become kin with the earth in order to get through the initiation, or to get through the difficulty, and certainly to go into the underworld and come out again. Which do I talk about that in the piece? I can't remember now. But the Underworld Journey really is the key journey.
Yes.
It's what we've avoided to do, you know, as a culture, even though it's written in all the mythos, you know, whether it's, you know, wherever you are, you always have to do that journey somewhere. But it's not written up. It's not apparent. It's no one tells you at school, enjoy your time now, because you're gonna meet a real problem at a certain point, and you're going to have to rise to it, and you're going to have to prove that your love is a powerful thing, and that you will go through hell and high water, you know, to win love on this planet. So anyway, have I gone off your question? Probably.
No, you've enhanced it and deepened it. I'm recalling now Ishtar's descent into the underworld, one of the most powerful stories in human history. And she gradually removes her clothing as she descends. Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, that's totally one of my favorites. In fact, I did a whole performance about that. It's called Divesting for Beginners, and I'm taking 7 coats off, 7 different coats of my life. It's a way of telling my story, but it was also about the oil industry, because it's from Iraq, right? The story, right. In Anna, and as is the oil. So there was 2 stories happening underground. So she was divesting herself, but it was also about divesting ourselves from the fossil fuel industry, which I was really involved in at the time.
That's brilliant, Charlotte. I didn't know you did. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's one of the stories.
Well done. That's
definitely one of the myths that I find really interesting, and partly because I was in the fashion business, I was very interested in taking what is she actually divesting herself from? Yes. And they're all, and I've taught it as well as a workshop. It's like, it's fascinating to say, okay, so we're going to look at those 7 coats. What are we actually taking off? They're all symbols of our power and our privilege.
Yes.
As in Western civilization, we've got this. We've taken on this stuff, right? And we've got to take it off.
Wonderful.
Not that I entirely took all my kit off, I have to say, on stage, but I did quite. There was quite a few quite a few coats going on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, in my moments of despair, which have been increasing of late, I am reminded that this is how it begins. This is how the paradigm shift begins. It begins with despair and dissatisfaction, deep dissatisfaction with what is, and as you say, just shedding that, just gradually. And you can't do it all at once. It's too traumatic. You have to do it in steps, like Ishtar did, carefully, slowly, with time, plenty of time. And then the answer, this is what I love about what you said. The answer is not going to be found in your old narratives, to be sure, but the expression of those narratives in politics, philosophy, education. You've got to reinvent the world. And the way we do that is through art. And so what comes out of despair and even destruction has to be the imagination, as you said, but that gets expressed through art. So I'm reminded of that old film, Contact, that Carl Sagan wrote the novel for. And, you know, it's a funny, it's a funny little film, but my favorite part is she finally arrives. The astronaut finally arrives at the alien planet, and she says, "Oh, they should have sent a poet."
Well, not a scientist, yeah.
Right.
I think that's really true. I mean, I was thinking about, I was writing something about art, and I just think that in the article, I talk about this, the dichotomy we have with the left and the right hemisphere, in McGilchrist's work, the master and the emissary, and that the left hemisphere, with its total focus and its love of the abstract, is increasingly dominating the world and the way we see it, and that, in order to rebalance the way we see, we have to go into the right hemisphere. But in terms of how we get there, we're not, this is what's so frustrating, really, about the whole climate crisis and any other crisis, ecological crisis, is that the response of our culture is more science, more data, more.
That's right.
More numbers, more algorithms, more control, and actually the right hemisphere isn't about that. Right. It's many, many things happening at once. And it seems to me that the art and writing and dance, in fact, all creative forms, have the language, they inhabit a language that allows you to navigate and enter the realm of the right hemisphere, and that you actually want to. You see, the thing is that it's going to be right. You've got to go into the right hemisphere because I tell you so. That is not going to get you there. What's going to get you there is the sound of music. I'm not literally sound, you know what I mean? The sound, or yes, not Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews is not going to get you to the right hemisphere. Well, she
can take you part of the way. Yes.
Yeah, you could kind of go in the mountains, but anyway. But you've got to be able to move. I mean, I'm sure your wife knows. You've got to move into it. You've got to work with metaphor.
Yes.
You've got to make connections. You've got to use your intuition, and be in a space where you actually allow lots of things happening at once, because the left rational mind likes things in order. It's slightly on the spectrum, whatever.
Right, sure.
It's got to get things in order, and if it doesn't, it's messy and it freaks out. So all those terrors have got. But an artist can take you in there, and you've forgotten that you're frightened. Right? It can take you into these different realms just because it's fascinating or beautiful, in a way that science and data it's never going to do that, because it's not holding your hand, is it? It's just telling you what to think. It's not saying, "Hey, come, let's go in there." I mean, sort of the encounters that one can have letting go of an old narrative can be scary.
Oh my goodness, yes, traumatic. Yeah. Because
it's not just a personal thing, is it? I mean, you can be. I mean, when I went traveling and I'd come back and I'd meet people that I grew up with, or I'd worked with in the media, and they looked at me as I was completely nutty. And they weren't interested in what I'd experienced in Colombia or Ecuador or wherever. It was just like, oh no, but we didn't want to hear about that. And you feel like an alien, right? Because you've left that you is gone. You're a different iteration of yourself, and that can be quite discombobulating. And it's kind of all right when you're, because I was traveling, I was more interested in the life I had on the road than coming back, to be honest. But the difficulty, as you were saying about Joseph Campbell, is the real return, which is when you come back and you have to bring what you've learned, your teachings, or your treasures from the underworld. You have to bring them back and give them to the people, right? Because that's the deal.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing, because often the people just don't want to hear what you have to say.
Or even if they do, cannot relate to what you're saying,
No.
because they're at a different, literally a different place.
Yeah.
I want to let our viewers hear your beautiful prose, and this passage relates exactly to what you were just saying. So I want to read this and let people hear it, and let you comment further on it if you like. Charlotte writes, "Every person is born with archaic intelligence embedded in their bones." I mean, that sentence in itself is worth pondering. Every person is born with archaic intelligence embedded in their bones. Though our minds are distracted by numbers, algorithms, facts, and data, our physical beings, stepping into a rainforest or on a mountain path, still instinctively recognize the patterns of fur and feather, stone and leaf. We see the moving shapes of clouds and rivers, but we just don't remember how to communicate with each other about what we experience. I mentioned earlier that I think you've sketched us a map in the brief pages in Noema. And this is it right here. I mean, first of all, I just love that writing, just the phrase patterns of fur and feather, stone and leaf. Wonderful. And that was us for most of our existence on the planet. That's what we read. We read those patterns. Those are gone. I mean, I live very near a large municipal park here, but even if I go up this afternoon and walk into that park, I'm not there. It needs to be more immersive, I think. Is that right? Like you experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do it almost anywhere, really, to be honest, Greg. I mean, I've taught, okay. I teach reconnection it's called Reconnection with the Wild. And, and I encourage, people to sit wherever they are. Of course, it's easier if in the country. If you went, I mean, I spent a lot of time in Santa Barbara, for example. So, you can go up into the mountains there. I mean, I don't know what's happened since the forest fires, but I mean, you're right in there. I mean, it's a fabulous country, right? Really amazing. Or you're by the ocean. I mean, the ocean is just, that's it really, isn't it? I mean, that wonderful Pacific Ocean you have there. But you can actually, so long as you give yourself time and space, you can really reconnect. So I often tell people just like to get into their body, be by the tree, find your anchor, breathe, feel your feet on the ground, and then open. Make time and space for it. Sometimes go. I get up really early in the morning, so it just got the world and me. It's just like, or you walk into twilight, or you walk into the snow. You go with the wind. There are just so many ways of approaching the planet, but it's really your attitude toward it. I think that's really an important thing. And key is stopping this.
Right.
Which I think is actually really very, very hard for a lot of people. I mean, that is a practice. You just have to let the thoughts, go.
Right.
And just like, switch off from the machines, and just go, and just immerse yourself.
I'm so glad to hear that. That was the response from the class when we read your essay together. Is I see this, I understand this, I want this. How do I get there? And so, did you say you offer a workshop or something on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we do it. I've taught in lots of different places. I teach creative writing, obviously being a writer, but it's also in combination with landscape. So I do what I call an earth dialogue. So I explain to people, and then they often go on a solo journey, and then they come back and share with people what their experiences are. Then they draw a map of all their common experiences, and then they use that map and then write about it. So it's the relationship with your encountering a landscape, which could be, I mean, now we've been doing things on Zoom. I've been saying, wherever you go where you can, right?
Okay.
But with Dark Mountain, we've gone into places like Rannoch Moor, right up in the Highlands of Scotland.
Yes.
done this in the forests of Sweden and lots of different in those days when we could travel, lots of different places. And then you come back, but it's also the speaking out. It's important in life, I think, with this. If you're really engaging with the planet, is that our voice is physical, and we used to, before we wrote everything, we spoke, and we spoke with each other, maybe around a fire, which is what we do in Dark Mountain. You're telling your story, you're telling your dream out loud, and that's what. Then the earth can hear it as much as you can.
Nice.
And that you sing. Somebody once said, what's the point of human beings, right? And I can't remember which writer it was. I think she was Native American on the West Coast, up in Washington, and she was saying, we're here to sing and dance and create and make beauty.
Yes.
Wherever we can, of what we see and of what we experience. And I just felt that just spoke to me. So that's why I'm always very keen on art, is that's what we give back. That's what we give back to the planet, that we're reflecting the beauty in our pottery or in our dance or in our storytelling or, and the way we relate to each other.
I am heartened that here in the United States, our poet laureate is a Muskogee Creek poet named Joy Harjo, one of my favorite poets. And I honestly don't know how she got appointed during the last administration, but I'm glad she was. And she's
that is quite unusual, isn't it? Yeah,
right. And so, there are things around us, as you say. There is nature at hand. You don't have to go to the Amazon. You probably shouldn't go to the Amazon.
No, I think the Amazon is probably not now or ever, actually. I mean, it's not time for that kind of travel, but definitely. I mean, one of the things that Dark Mountain is very keen on, there's, at the end of the manifesto, there's kind of 8 principles, and one of them is that celebrating writing an art that is embedded in place. Yes. Where you are, and the time you're in, so that one isn't always, wanting to be somewhere else or somewhere glamorous. I mean, it's very different. I love mountains, I love desert, and I love space. I loved being in the States, for example. It was like, we just don't get there. We're all living in tiny little houses, and there's not much room, and there are too many people, and but there's still beauty, and I live in a totally flat land. There's like not a hill in sight, but you have to love where you are. That's the challenge, and not want to be somewhere else. You have to really appreciate where you are, because that sense of home is really key. I mean, we have to feel at home on the planet wherever we find ourselves, and that doesn't matter where you come from originally, or how much you've moved, or whatever. It's where you are now. Can you feel at home? And our culture spends all its time, 24/7 culture, trying to get us not to feel at home. Because a person who feels at home stands their ground and has time to pay attention to what's going on. So if you're constantly being moved on, you don't belong, you're not the right person, you're wrong color, you're the wrong age, you're the wrong gender, we don't want you, you're the wrong class, and it's like, the earth doesn't give a damn what class you are or where you're from. Do you love where you are? Do you love your kin? That's all that matters.
Right.
It's not just a tree doesn't judge you for not living in a big house.
Right. And if we can find that place, mental place, I guess, and connect it to the physical space, there's such liberation and relief in that we're not in charge, that there are things bigger than us. We just have to come into harmony with those things. We don't have to dominate them. In fact, dominating them is killing us.
Yeah. It is. It's that desire to control, isn't it? I mean, for me, when you work with the earth, or when I teach people to connect with the planet, I say, okay, so you have a big choice. Do you want control or do you want relationship?
Nice.
Because I can tell you one thing: the earth doesn't want to be controlled. And do you want to be controlled? No, no, you just want to control. So that's a different thing. So it's got to be relationship, right? And then you're right; it's in harmony. You know, listening is possibly the most important thing. I think for writers, anyway. You know, everybody thinks the story is the story you're telling, but actually, it's actually how you're listened to is what makes the story. So it's really lovely. Your feedback for my piece there, Greg, is just really very joyful to listen to, because it's rare actually to get sort of feedback and to be able to listen to someone responding to what you're writing.
Oh, well, you're most welcome. And obviously it affected me, it affected my students, and I want to pass it around everywhere I can, because your voice here, it's hitting the exact right notes for me. And it's doing so with such great beauty. Speaking of which, as we approach our hour, I want to let our viewers hear your voice again, because it's so beautiful and so powerful. It contains philosophical insights, but also just sheer beauty. So here's a passage that I want everyone to hear. And we've been talking about the struggle, the difficulties of breaking. You have that wonderful metaphor of breaking. We must break things and then of course things break on their own too. But those are openings. And so viewers of this video might think, oh, this is just a call to some sort of stern discipleship. But it's not. I mean, maybe it's discipleship or sternness, but there are rewards here, is what I'm trying to say. There are rewards. And I remember reading through the essay and thinking, okay, we've got to have something good come here, out of this. And here it is in this powerful paragraph. So this is Charlotte writing again. We gain kinship with the beast. Charlotte's talking about what we gain from this struggle, this process. It may not even be a struggle. It may just be letting go as much as anything. We gain kinship with the beasts. We gain the kingdom of the fairy stories and bring back treasure from the underworld. And we advance toward the unknown, come what may, because somewhere deep inside us, we know that no amount of worldly prestige or riches can ever match the experience of knowing our true worth as a creature among our fellows on this all-communicating earth. Bravo, and thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any words you would like to, parting words you'd like to give to the viewers in the PRS community who will be seeing this, and anyone else? Again, the article is in Noema, which you can find online, and it's called Relearning the Language of a Lost World.
Well, gosh, that's a difficult thing to say, isn't it? Some parting words. But apart from good luck, and it's been lovely speaking with you, which is absolutely the case. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. I
think the thing is just to remain open, actually.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about breaking, there's that, is it Buckminster Fuller? He said it's like we're in that egg. Do you remember that metaphor he used? Like we're in an egg and we think everything's running out and it's all going horribly wrong. There's no oat yolk left. There's no album left, and it's like then there's this cracking thing, and then oh my God, I'm a bird, and it's a different element. And I feel that there is that. I mean, we don't know, do we?
Right.
It's unknowable. We live in a the earth is very mysterious, and we don't know. We've been philosophers for years, right? We've had imaginations, but none of us really know where we are. But what we do know is it's quite mysterious. And if we open to that, then we get a sense of it, right? And that's part of the communication. It's like we don't want to be in lockdown. I mean, we are in lockdown. We don't want to be in this lockdown in the head. And maybe the whole business of lockdown has been like an alchemical jar, like a hermetic space in which things are being changed. Or, we're like these, like the butterfly that, the caterpillar that dissolves and then becomes a butterfly. There are these states which feel like the end of the world, but actually they're not. They're the start of another one. And I would say that I don't know. I can't promise anything because we don't know. We're in it together. We really are in it together in this sense. But there is a future, but we have to open to it. And that's worth cracking the egg for.
Oh, brilliant. That's so perfect. Wonderful. Charlotte, thank you for spending an hour with me late on your day, early in mine.
No, it's lovely. Thank you.
You're a delight. I'm so glad your voice is out there, and I'm so glad I discovered it, and I hope more people discover it. I'll post the Dark Mountain link in the description of this video. And please keep writing and sharing your experiences, and good luck with Dark Mountain.
Thank you very much, Greg. All the best for you. Have a wonderful summer.
All right, you too.